Could running on a treadmill be bad for you? Well, you're going to find out that and much, much more on today's episode of The Movement, the podcast for people who want to know the truth about how to have, happy, healthy body by getting rid of the mythology, the propaganda, sometimes the outright lies that you've heard about what it takes to run, to walk, to hike, or to do anything with natural movement. We're here trying to make a movement. We're trying to make natural movement the obvious, better, healthy choice, the way natural food currently is. And I'm not going to give you all the stuff. You know what to do about subscribing and liking and sharing and hitting the bell. Just go to www.jointhemovementmovement.com to find out all the places you can interact with us. And if you want to be part of the tribe, please subscribe. So I'm here with my friend Jeff Veron. Say hi, Jeff.
Hey.
I thought you were going to say hi, Jeff. Let's try that again. Just say hi, Jeff.
Hi, Steve.
Damn it. These people who have problems with authority. So, and Jeff, would you tell people who you are and what you do? This is like an episode of What's My Line, where we're going to do it with everyone else in a silent booth so they can't hear it.
So I'm one of the founders of True Form Runner, and we manufacture a curved non-motorized treadmill.
Pause. I'm going to say those two words because, 2.5 words, one word and then a hyphenated word, curved, non-motorized. Now let me pause right there. In the intro I said, could running on a treadmill be bad for you? Not these. We're going to talk more about that in a second. So True Form Runner, curved, non-motorized treadmill. We'll say why that's something you're going to be interested in a moment.
So we have a super shallow curve on our treadmill, and what we found 5 or plus years ago, in order to make the treadmill move effectively, you need to be in a good, healthy running position.
So I'm going to pause there. A couple of weeks ago, I did a podcast episode with our friend Mark Cucuzzella, and I said to Mark, if you're going to teach someone how to run barefoot or with proper natural form, how would you do that? He goes, it's really easy. We do it in our store. He runs has a store called Two River Treads in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. I just put him on a True Form treadmill for a few minutes because you can't run wrong on it. And then I say, just go replicate that when you're out in the real world.
True, right? So you could run wrong, right?
Is there a but?
Well, you can run wrong, but it's hard. And if you're in a minimal shoe or barefoot, it's even harder to run wrong because you're already getting that proprioceptive feedback to be in the right position to begin with. Then when you put them on a True Form, so it is possible, but it's
really hard.
It's really hard.
So speaking of which, if you're watching the video of this, I'm a little sweaty because right before we did this, I jumped on. There's 2 different versions of the True Form that I jumped on to experiment with, and just in a few minutes, and it's also 85, 90 degrees out there, so I'm a little toasted. But let's back up and start with my initial. Oh wait, usually we love to start this podcast with a movement, and sometimes it's just a physical movement, sometimes it's an internal movement, sometimes it's a breathing thing. I asked you if you had something that you do or that you would want to have other people do, and you had an idea.
Well, what I like to do or remind myself to do when I'm not doing it is to breathe through my nose down into my lower diaphragm.
So why don't you do a quick little tutorial for human beings who are listening / watching?
So
you can look right there.
Funny aside, hey.
People.
So in order to drive a commercial truck across the country, which is what I do oftentimes, as I've done here, you need to have a DOT doctor exam, right? So
did not know that.
Yeah. So if it says, if you have the name on the side of your vehicle, even your Subaru, right?
Yeah.
If you said 0 shoes on the side and you were driving into a different state, you're engaged in commerce.
Okay.
You need to have this DOT medical card.
So they're trying to make sure you're not going to have a heart attack on the way, or
I think so. So I'm getting my exam. Doctor, when's the last time you been to the doctor? I'm like, I don't really go to a doctor. Well, you're healthy. You should go to a doctor. Well, but if I'm healthy, why would I go to a doctor? So we went back and forth through all this, and then the best part is when she's having me breathe, she's like, take a deep breath through your mouth, right? And I'm like, no, you can't breathe through your mouth, right? And it was just so the medical field, right? So I'm breathing through my nose, right? Filling my diaphragm. And she's like, breathe through your mouth, and I was like, but I can't get a deep breath that way. So anyway, so that's what I remind myself to do is to breathe through my mouth or through my nose.
So breathing through your nose, and to get that deep breath, it's actually letting your diaphragm expand, so your diaphragm is a muscle that's normally shaped like this, and when you breathe, it can go like this. That's what pulls air into your body. And if you do that, it's going to make your entire core, if you will, expand. So some people think of diaphragmatic breathing as just making your belly go out, but if you really do it well, you're getting your sides to go out, the back to go out. The whole thing is just expanding from here down as your diaphragm goes. So you just do it by just focusing on the breath through the nose, going all the way down.
And then for me, just filling everything, right?
Yeah.
You know, just getting more and more air in.
And it's interesting you say that, because that's the other thing I've noticed. Especially people who've done a lot of yoga, and they think about diaphragmatic breathing, they think that it's all down here, and they forget that you can get the whole thing filling up your entire... I heard a comic today use a word that I've never used in a sentence describing my body, filling your entire thorax, which I just loved. So just get that breath just in through your nose, fill up the entire thing, relax, let it out. It's a good thing to remind yourself. Do you ever do like alternate nostril or any of the other variations, or just
No, I just remind myself when I'm not breathing to breathe. And if you're looking at your watch, you can see your heart rate immediately go down, right? It's an obvious benefit.
Do you know about heart rate variability?
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things that I never knew was a thing, when I would be like looking and watching my breathing and checking my heart rate and seeing that when I would breathe in, my heart rate would go up, and then I'd breathe out, it would go down. And I thought there was something wrong with me until I found out that was an actual thing, that's what's supposed to happen, and that if you don't have the heart rate variability, bad sign.
So the guys in our office are Whoop geeks, and we do some training with some Navy SEALs, and they do a lot with Whoop. Whoop is a heart rate band that you wear that tracks heart rate variability and recovery.
Got it.
So that's their thing, right? And it doesn't show you anything; it's just data. And then you go to your app, and it syncs to the app, right? So it's just so it's this Whoop band, and we found out about it because these guys that are Navy SEALs, some of these guys, special op guys, SF guys, they're going hard at work, and then when they come back, they go hard at home, and then they need to show up and be fit and recovered and ready for their team,
right?
And if they came home, for whatever period of time and didn't take care of themselves, when they're called again,
they check the
to be an elite, essentially athlete, and incredibly keen and their brain function high, if they haven't recovered. So what you see with this Whoop band is that if you have a couple drinks, right, your recovery is half of what it would be. If you have 15 drinks, there's zero recovery. Your body's
15 drinks, you're dead.
Right. Well, I mean, people that practice, but it affects them. So for them, it's a way for them to create a group that they can then hold each other accountable.
Oh, that's interesting.
When they're home, to say, how has your recovery been? How has your heart rate variability been? In addition to, something stupid like how many steps have you taken, right? We're not they're less focused on that and more focused on a meaningful metric.
There's a friend of mine who, this was 10 years ago, maybe longer, who he developed it was like a neoprene vest that was doing the first real-time biometric data sensing. So they were looking at heart rate variability. They were the first ones who could measure it in real time. And when they were just starting to do the experiments, one of the guys who was in the company, they put the vest on him, and they noticed that he had like no variability at all. And they're going, this is not good. You should get to the doctor like right now. And he gets to the doctor, and as he gets there, he's got like a massive heart attack. Huh. My other favorite story from these guys, they had one of these vests on a Formula One driver, and they're just looking at the monitor. They're looking at the computer and seeing all the stats on his breath and his heart rate and all these other things. And then suddenly, like, his breathing and his heart rate just dropped by about 50%, just like boom. And they were tapping the machine. They're checking all the connections. They couldn't figure out what's going on. Then they look out. They see his car going boom, 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 just end over end. Just got into a massive crash. And while he was rolling the car, everything just calmed down. And afterwards, he said, well, there's nothing I could do.
Yeah.
I was like,
just relax.
Yeah. So, all right. So back to treadmill things.
Yeah.
So my initial kind of intro to the thing, treadmills being bad for you. Talk about, there's so many things I want to ask you, but just talk about standard treadmills and why they're not what people think they are.
Oh, such a slippery slope.
Yes.
Tell me about healthy shoes, right?
Dude, hold on. So wait, I was in Germany just recently, and I'm on all these panel discussions, and at a certain point it hit me. It's like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to tell the truth. I'm here to get people to have an experience that's beneficial for them. I don't care if the owners and the CEOs and the marketing guys from these billion-dollar companies don't like me. That's not my issue.
Yeah.
So I'm going to encourage you. Look, you have enough issues with authority as it is to bucket this time. So you can be as politically correct as you want, but just let's talk about normal treadmills.
So here's the long and short of it, right? So you got on those two treadmills that we have outside, right? You ran exactly the same on both of them.
Yep.
The problem is that you're a balanced, highly accomplished runner, and I don't mean that you're fast or you were fast or you are fast now, and what you're able to accomplish there. I mean that your mechanics are super
consistent,
clean, right? So the probably the honest side of this is I could put you on any environment, and you'd get in there and you would run pretty well.
But
right?
when I'm on a regular treadmill, I don't even know how to describe how or why it is completely unsatisfying.
Well, it's a weird sensation. So I haven't. I got on a regular treadmill. David Brennan down in Tulsa.
I don't. You know everybody.
Guy. Yeah. So
he knows everybody.
So anyway, I got on a treadmill to do
At some
his
point,
protocol.
I'm expecting Jeff to say to me something like, Obama, president. I was hanging out with him I got him a treadmill, and he really liked Michelle, not as much. I mean, she went for the other one. I mean, seriously, people accuse me of knowing a lot of people, and the number of times you say, "Do you know so and so?" and it's some very big deal dude. I'm like,
I was talking to somebody. I don't remember. Oh, I know who it was. It was a guy.
They just put me
I
on
was
the
talking
spot.
with a guy, and I kept going. Well, you know.
Yeah.
And apparently, he was like jotting that we were. It was a phone conference, and
You're
we were feeling each other out, like whether we wanted to do business together.
Yeah.
And it was for live on demand programming, right? So we're creating live on demand programming. So I guess he's jotting these names down. I have no idea. Like he's just going on the other end, and he thinks I'm like full of shit. And like, who are these people, right?
Yeah.
So I guess he Googled him, and then when we met him in person, he was like, "Holy shit!" He's like, "I didn't realize." I'm like, the tip of the spear for us is insane. It's getting everybody else to come along. So anyway, back to motorized treadmill. So motorized treadmill, I got on this motorized treadmill doing this protocol that David Brennan had created, where you ran on a Trueform, ran a motorized treadmill, ran a Trueform, ran a motorized treadmill. And I hadn't run a motorized treadmill in years at that point, and I got on it. It was such a foreign concept, and I'm like, why would anybody run on this thing? It feels so weird.
Well, what's interesting to me, someone did a study recently on the kinematics of treadmill running, basically how your body is moving, what the angles are when you're landing, what the angles are when you're taking off, just basically what your body's doing on a treadmill. And they very proudly, for some reason, showed that your basic movement pattern is the same. So
remarkably, if you're picking up a foot and setting it down, you're going to have a similar movement.
Yeah, similar movement pattern. But of course, they didn't use an EMG, electromyograph, to measure what the muscles are actually doing, which is a whole different story. I mean, the number of people that I know, who in the winter they'll be on a treadmill and they feel like they're doing great, and then the weather gets good and they go outside and they can't make it 100 yards.
And they hurt their knee.
Yeah,
right? I mean, they hear that from people all the time. I hurt my knee. As soon as I go outside, I hurt my knee. Right. So. Or I come inside and I hurt my knee.
Well, and there was another one that I've seen recently. Someone sent me some pictures of his shoe, and the wear patterns on his shoe and on the insole in the shoe were crazy. I mean, just the amount of well, I said to him, look, the only way you get abrasion, the only way you get wear patterns like that is with friction, which comes from horizontal force. Because if you just put something down and lift it back up again, that's not a big deal. So what are you doing that's creating all that force? He said, well, all I do is treadmill running. And I went, oh, Jesus. So that's what's happening. You're putting your foot down in a way that you're able to run on a treadmill, but clearly it's not good for you, because look at how much friction, how much excessive force you're putting.
So what we say is there's a continuum, right? There's a continuum between a motorized treadmill and various qualities therein.
Right.
All the way up until, I think, the Trueform at the other end.
Right.
And along that continuum, people are enabled. Sorry, I'm showing it over here along the continuum. So
way over here.
Way over here, it's a continuum. So along that continuum, people are enabled to operate in dysfunction. So you can be as dysfunctional as you want,
but still able
to move until you break on a motorized treadmill.
Right.
Likewise on the road.
Right.
And then there are non-motorized treadmills that are way steeper curve than what we have.
Right.
Same thing, like you're enabled to move
in a way that's
not ideal. And then the Trueform challenges you as the environment that we know today to be the one that is most challenging to move well.
So I'm reminded when you say that I'm amazed when I meet runners who hear about what proper form's supposed to look like. And they've taken little bits of that and applied them in ways that I would have never in my wildest dreams imagined. So my favorite version of this is people who hear that you're supposed to land on your forefoot. And so they'll still overstride. They'll reach out with their foot way in front of their body and then point their toes and land on their forefoot. And it looks like prancing. And so some of them started, it looks like prancing, but then they figured out a way to make it not look like prancing because they also hear that it's supposed to be putting less force in your joints if you're running barefoot or in a truly minimalist shoe. And so what they end up doing is running in a way that looks kind of like Groucho Marx walking really fast. So they bend their knees a whole bunch, and it's just this really surprising movement pattern that they're able to do, and it accomplishes something for them, but it's certainly not running. So let's talk about, before we actually get into talking about how running on a curved treadmill feels and why it works, because I do want to do that and talk about my experience as well. How the hell did you get into this? How did this happen? Who are you? What are you doing here?
Well, so, yeah. My wife Robin and I were just trying to figure out how to get it done in 20 minutes, right? So my wife Robin and I like to kite surf in the Dominican Republic. So we wanted to do something.
That's all you need to say. I can see the clear line. I
was running a brick and mortar business, and she has a company.
Hold on. Please tell me you were actually selling bricks and mortar.
No, I was running a winery, and I put a French bistro in at the winery, which is pretty cool. And it was a really cool job, a gig. It was for somebody else, which I'm not accustomed to doing, and it was brick and mortar. Like I had, in order for it to be as successful as it could be, I needed to be there. Right. So we wanted to kite surf more in the Dominican. So I was looking for things that I could do. Her job as a media production company, advertising company is already portable. Go do a shoot, go somewhere, edit it, send it over upload it to the customer, right? So. Anyway, I met a guy who manufactured a prismatic skylight system. So you cut a hole in a roof, right? You capture the light. You diffuse it.
Cool.
Yeah, super cool, right? Electricity is expensive in the Dominican. Sunlight is abundant. Manufacturing flat roofs is also abundant.
Right.
Find a way to get that done, right? So I was walking through his plant. And
by the way, I'm hoping my microphone doesn't pick up every time you hit the table.
It probably does. Right. I'm a table pounder. So
okay. Anyway.
So
just realized that.
So we're walking through his plant, and I was a 5-finger convert at that point, right? So
well, let me pause there. So what year is this?
Oh my God! What are we in now? 19?
Yes, that was
13.
Okay. Oh, so
early 13.
All right. Interesting. So a little late in the game. I mean, the minimalist thing kind of kicked in 2009, 2010.
Yep.
So, and why? How had you gotten into 5 fingers? What was going on?
Well, so I have an ankle from an accident. Couple accidents. An accident as a child, and then an accident in my 20s. And the second accident pretty much eliminated the function in my ankle. So it has 10 degrees of dorsiflexion, and that's it.
Got it.
So I tried everything, right? I tried boots, I tried ankle braces, I tried Scarpa, with an ankle brace, and just because the thing to do was to immobilize it, right? And then rice it, right? So immobilize it during the day and rice it at night, and after.
Sorry for people who don't know, rice, rest, ice, compression, elevation.
Right. Rice. So compress it all day and immobilize.
Right.
And then
because that's going to
because that's what the doctors told me to do, and the solution was at the end of that is when the pain gets to be too much, we'll just fuse it, and then you won't have any pain. So like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, somewhere along the way, I think it was like a Runner's World. I read like an excerpt of Born to Run or something, and about having function and allowing function in your foot, and that was probably in 2009. So, I thought, well, geez, that kind of makes sense. I should try it. So I tried it and expecting that I would get, an hour into it and my ankle, which was typically about the size of a cantaloupe, would be, the size of like a watermelon.
Right.
And I got a couple hours into it and
Felt good.
lo and behold, my ankle was actually smaller. It hurt less. And I didn't make a ton of sense to me at that point, but I didn't really care.
Right.
So then I started, I moved. So at the time I was, I don't know, I was playing rugby. I was doing some strongman stuff. I was CrossFitting. I would do, Ragnars or Spartan races or whatever just to make sure that I kept some cardio in the deck. And so I got a pair of Nike Frees. And that was my transition shoe. I didn't know that, right?
So, but no one did, because when the Free came out, the articulation in that sole was miraculous. Granted, it had a high heel and massive flare and all those other problems, but just to be able to feel more. I remember because I got a pair in maybe 2006, maybe even a little sooner, but just walking around and feeling the ground more was amazing. If I put on a pair now, then my knees blow out because of all that heel lift and all the rest. But as the first product that was designed to give you some simulation of natural movement, it was a gateway drug for many of us.
So I ended up doing my transition really well. I wore Five Fingers as my casual shoe, and I ran and trained in my Nike Frees. And then I went to do a Ragnar, and I thought, I'll do it all in my Five Fingers, and I started running my first leg, and I was like, okay, this isn't going to happen. I'm not ready for this, right? So I need to be in my Nikes again. And then I was the guy who was just like you said, I'm like, run on your toes, because I was an expert, because I now have a pair of Five Fingers, right? So run on your toes, run on your toes. So
don't let your heel touch the ground.
Well, I mean, you can't not let your heel touch the ground at 270 pounds, right? I mean, that you don't take many steps there, right? So as a result, because I'm 270 and because I forced myself to run some miles and because I moved to a minimal shoe because my ankle didn't hurt, I ended up running pretty well. And I think it's like if you're a smaller guy and you lift a lot of weight.
What'd you point at me for?
Well, I'm just, somebody was smaller. So if you're going to lift a lot of weight, you have to lift it well. Well, the inverse is kind of true also. If you're 270, 275 and you want to go run and you have an ankle that doesn't bend, you better do it well or you're not going to run very far before something breaks up the chain. So anyway, we're walking through this guy's plant with prismatic skylights. The guts of the treadmill are on the floor.
That was good how you brought it back.
Thank you. And I got on it and I ran on it. I said, holy shit, I can't run on a treadmill. When I run on a treadmill in the gym, literally everybody in the gym, especially my right side, everybody in the gym, they all turn out like, what the fuck is going on back there, right? So the treadmill starts, walking and pounding. It looks like I'm beating out of this treadmill. And I'm like, all right, so I just get off the treadmill.
Screws are flying.
And I got on this thing. I was like, wow, this is really smooth. This is cool. And then this other girl got on. She was running the Hartford Half Marathon in 2 weeks. And she was a runner, big, stupid, clunky, heavy heel, drop shoes. She gets on, her arms are out front of her, and she's running. And she's 2 steps, standing at the back. She bends over, starts running, gets it going again. 2 steps, stands at the back. And I'm like, run on your toes. So anyway, I said to the guy who's now our good friend, Brian, who manufactured the treadmill, I said, dude, you should train running. I come to think of it, right? If I go to CrossFit or I go to strongman or I go to rugby, all I'm doing is I'm training these simple movements. Nobody's ever telling me to do this when I'm running, right? If they say, go run a mile, come back in, or if you screwed something up in rugby, do a lap around the field, right? It was nothing about function.
This is one of the things that's so incredible. People think, because look, running is natural. Running is what we do. You see kids, as soon as they can walk, they start to run practically. And if you don't get in the way of them, then they've got awesome form. They get their feet right underneath their body. They're using just the right amount of energy. I like to say when you watch kids run, they get this weird look on their face that most adults don't have. I think it's called smiling. I'm not sure that's what it's called. But if you're going to do it well, especially if you then put on big thick shoes and you develop bad habits, people for some reason just don't think that you need to learn to run well, or that there's little things you can do. It's kind of like writing. Everyone assumes they know how to write because they had to write a paper when they were in elementary school or something. But if to write well is a very different skill. So anyway, same thing with running. So all right. So you had a great experience on this treadmill.
I said, dude, you should train running.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't think anybody trains running. And so we went to literally like in a couple of weeks later, the trade show that happens in the United URSA happened. It's an equipment trade show. Nothing's changed there in 30 years outside of our treadmill.
No, hey, that's not true. Kettlebells. Kettlebells weren't there till about 15 years ago.
Really?
Kettlebells. I met the guy who brought kettlebells to America. This is maybe.
Is it Russian?
Well, he worked with a Russian guy.
Okay.
But he was like a Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong guy. And then he met Pavel Tsatsouline, who was doing kettlebells, and went, you don't know how to sell this, I know how to sell things. And I remember being at an internet marketing event, it's got to be like 20 years ago.
Wow.
And they had kettlebells, and people were going, ooh, what the hell are these? Yeah. And so that's a new thing. And then there's all, there's tons of stuff that's like all goofy, dorky things that don't really work. But that's a whole
there's
story.
a bunch of bullshit stuff. Yeah.
Well,
But anyway.
But good stuff, yeah.
So anyway, so I said, I don't know. So we walked the trade. We literally flew to Vegas. Another story. Left my wallet. Anyway, so
it stayed in Vegas.
No, it didn't make it to Vegas. So we're on the way to the trade show, right? So you wind up and right. I'm at the dashboard. I'm like, boom! And like, fuck! Right? So no. And so he flies to Vegas. I wait. So it was just a very typical. If you've ever traveled with me, that's typical. So anyway. Eventually,
sorry, his wife is sitting over there and nodding vigorously.
So we get to Vegas. We do walk the trade show together, and there is nothing there, right? And I'm like, oh my god! Like so we started this business, right, with Robin, and thought that this is going to be simple. I'm sure the same thing with you and your shoes, right? Like people are, this is so obvious. Everybody's going to get it, right? How cool is this?
No, my line is we uttered the 5 dangerous entrepreneurial words. How hard could this be?
Yeah, well, so it was super easy, right? Yeah. So Brian has the product, Robin has the media company, right? I'm going to figure out how to meet people, right? We're going to spread the good word. The first year, Spartan race, CrossFit, we're engaged with everybody. This is going to be so simple. And then the big industry takes over, right? And they're like, you're not, and you must have this in the shoe world, right? You're not going to do this. This is, hey, sit down.
Oh, we had
and get out, right? So the lawsuits start rolling in.
Yeah.
And then the people and the copycats and then the people that backdoor your relationships and all this shit, right? So that I don't know. So so here we are coming out the backside, but it's been an interesting 5 years.
FYI, we had we've been told we haven't seen the actual smoking gun, but we've seen the smoke. We had a big order in with a major retailer, and one of our competitors called somewhat coincidentally at the last minute and said, "Yeah, we don't want them in your store."
Yeah,
it's like, oh, that's the way this works. I did not know that. All right,
as mean or that. So walked this trade show. Nothing was there.
Yeah.
Oh, so we decided our mutual friend Brian Roberts, my college friend, and he wore the crazy Correctos and these minimal shoes and all before and he would introduce them to me and I thought he was a kook with that stuff. And like now, if you go in the side of my door, correct toes when I'm driving, I jam them in, right? So anyway,
have you apologized to Brian?
Yeah, probably. Brian, I'm really sorry. So anyway, Brian's coming to town to ride. Brian's going between New York and Boston. We live between New York and Boston, and at exactly the same time, and I called him about the treadmill, and I said. Hey, this treadmill, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I'm riding with reps between New York and Boston, and I have a layover, and I'd like to come see you. Can I come see you? I said, sure. And I said, I want to show you the treadmill. So I grabbed the treadmill from the shop, threw it in my kitchen, and Brian ran on it. And I said, well, I'm right? That's the only option for me. If I ask you a question, I already know the answer.
and look, it's not arrogant if you're right.
If you're right. So I said, I'm right? And he said, well, shoe industry, can't really make those claims, but an expert maybe could. And I said, well, who's an expert? Tell me an expert. And he's like, there's a guy, right? And he is, all knowing when it comes to minimal shoes and healthy running and natural running. I could, and I'm like, do I have to go to Oregon? How do I find this guy? He's like, no, he's in West Virginia. West Virginia, right? So he says, do you want me to email him? I said, oh my God, you know this guy. So anyway, we took a video, cell phone video of Brian running in my kitchen, and emailed it to Dr. Mark. Yep. And he said, I'd love to, Brian sent him an email, better mousetrap, ? And
right.
And Mark replied back and said, I'd love to see it. I'm at the hospital on, Monday and Tuesday. I'm free Wednesday, Thursday. Then I've got Leo has a soccer game, and then I'm running a marathon, and then, I'm back and I'm writing a book, and I'm going to be at the store. And
right.
So if you could come Wednesday or Thursday, I'm free. So we threw the treadmill in the back of my truck. We drove down to see Mark. We got into the store that afternoon. We set it up. He got on it, and he's like, oh, this is amazing. Oh my God, this is amazing. And we said, yeah, it's great, except for that nobody can run on it, right? So what do we do? He said, oh, it's easy. Just do my 1, 2, 3 run. And what's the 1, 2, 3 run? So, chest up, reach up, covered, head in a neutral position, start off walking, go to a jog. And we said, wow, maybe we could, he's like, do you want to film? We could film it if you want, right? I just wrote a thing for the Air Force, and we could just do the Air Force thing, and we'll do it on your treadmill. And so the next day we came in, Robin broke out her video gear, and we set up in the store, and we shot our first 8 running training videos with Dr. Mark. And literally that's how the company was born.
So let's fast forward to, hey, how about to now? So let's talk about actually using it, and backing up to something that you said before of that woman who was there in Brian's place, and just getting on the treadmill and like finding yourself flying off the back. Not flying off the back like in those YouTube videos you'll see where someone
standing at the back.
Yeah, standing at the back. So I'm going to describe my experience with the curved treadmill. It's not a huge curve. It's not like a big bowl. Do you have the math on what the curve is?
I do.
Can you tell me?
No.
Damn it.
Not
right.
on them. When we hang up, right?
Suffice it to say.
But it's very subtle.
Yeah, it's a subtle curve. But what happens is you're standing in the middle of the treadmill and nothing happens, doesn't move. And then you put your foot kind of on the front and you try to, there's an interesting thing where you're trying to find the place to put your foot where the weight that you're applying or the force that you're applying allows the thing to move. And you can feel like if I do it a little wrong, it just doesn't move at all. I'm just kind of sticking my foot in front of me, nothing happens. And if I do it wrong in a different way, it kind of wants to move a little too fast. And very quickly, within just a couple of steps,
yep.
You sort of find the spot where if I run in that spot, it moves and it feels like I'm on a road. It feels like I'm running. It doesn't feel like I'm on a treadmill because the non-motorized part, you're the one making it move. So it's a little harder than actually running on the road because you're actually having to continue to get the thing moving a little bit, and it's different on the different treadmills. But suffice it to say, you find that sweet spot, and then it allows you to go. But if you do it, if you're too far forward or too far back, describe tell me how you would describe what happens if you're not in that sweet spot.
Well, it depends on what the deviation from healthy running is, right?
Correct.
So if you're overstriding, the only way to overstride and be able to keep the treadmill moving so that you're not staying at the back is to break at the waist.
Interesting.
So you have to make 2 compensations. So what we see if people are making the Trueform move, mm-hmm. but they're not moving well, is typically they have a couple of compensations that offset each other. So if you're overstriding, then you have to bend at your waist because on the Trueform you have to have your foot landing under your center of mass.
Right.
So if you want to overstride,
you got to move.
You got to lean. You go hang on over it.
Right.
And then people drag their foot back. Right.
Right.
And then so you'll see some people who are upright and they paw back
yep.
but all of those things are hard.
Right.
So it organically, you just make the change. I don't
right.
have to sit there and tell you. I activate your left glute and stand up straight. So some people that have those kind of problems, maybe we'll stop them. Mm-hmm. And then have them do some activation and get back on, and then
right.
and then the problem's resolved. So
that's an interesting one. The number of times where I do this thing that in today's climate could get me arrested. But the number of times I have said to someone, yeah, you're not actually using your glutes, so I want you to do something crazy, feel my ass. And I just say, stick your hand on my butt, and I want you to feel what it feels like when I take a stride. And they go, oh my God. I go, yeah. Now I want you to do the same
that
thing.
Activation.
Yeah, it's like you got to feel that you can use it.
Glutes are activated. I wasn't driving much.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So anyway, I mean that and they're really simple drills. I mean, the walking is actually much harder than running on the Trueform. So you need to be balanced, you need to be upright, and you can your hands over your head. If you do like an asymmetric load, grab a kettlebell or an elastic band and attach the elastic band to the Trueform handrail, and then just press it overhead, and that will you have to be activated.
Oh,
otherwise,
So cool. Wait, so what are the other things that you like? Fun little tricks and games that you play on there?
Two bands overhead, right? So you can do planks, you can do all sorts of activation stuff. You can do. I saw you playing before we started on doing some shuttles.
Oh yeah.
Some side movements. You can do karaoke if you're super.
I did that. Well, one of the things that I did was just I stood on the edge and just used my other foot like I was on a skateboard, which is a real great thing for getting glute activation and also for feeling where that
as long as you're upright, right? Because as soon as people bend over and do that, then all we're activating is the hip.
Well, and it's an interesting thing actually. I have a collection of weird all two-wheeled devices. I don't have a regular bicycle. I have an elliptigo, which is the dorkiest form of two-wheeled devices. So it's an elliptical bicycle, and you look like a complete crazy person when you're on it. I love this thing. I adore it. The only thing that looks crazier is having more than one person, like two people riding ellipticos. Then it's bad.
You mean not on the same elliptico?
No, just two people next to each other. It's like
even dorkier.
Yeah, it's way too dorky. And then I have a recumbent bike. I got rid of one of my two-wheeled. Actually, I had a three-wheeled thing. It was a trike that just works from the way you move it. But then I've got a scooter that's two 26-inch wheels and a platform to stand on, and you just push. And it was fun because I got this thing around the time that we started Zero Shoes, where I was just in a pair of do-it-yourself sandals. And it was really interesting discovering that if you do what most people think you want to do, reach out and pull the ground underneath you, doesn't work and ripped up the bottom of my sandal. And if you put your foot underneath your center of mass and use your glutes and push, then you get way more speed. And
that's cool. I wouldn't have thought that on a scooter.
Oh yeah, it's a blast.
Yeah, I always cringe a little bit when we do because the scooter drill's like one of our drills, right?
Oh really?
It's from Mark. I'm thinking people are going to grab and paw.
Well, but you can, but it just doesn't feel right. It's just not efficient. And when you get your foot underneath you, it's just really, really easy. And there's this little rhythm that you get into doing it. And I had a blast. I mean, the scooter, it weighs like 16 pounds. Oh. And so there's a couple of big hills that were by our old house, and I'd see guys on mountain bikes, and I'd be passing them going up the hill. As I'm just, and I'm sure they looked at me, it's like, oh, what a loser.
Yeah.
But going downhill was really fun too. 40 miles an hour on a scooter is a little hairy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm trying to think if there's just anything else that you've discovered just about natural movement. Because I know for me, and for almost everyone I know in this space, we got into it from some personal experience. We didn't necessarily have some massive background in biomechanics and kinematics and all these things, but you learn quickly because you're discovering it and meeting all these other interesting people. What else have you found from doing this that you didn't expect or that's been surprising?
I think the most surprising thing for me is just how difficult the obvious is to translate to people, right? I mean, people are walking around Ursa, that trade show, going, "Oh, look at this," and "Oh, look at that." And you're going, "Are you kidding me?" Like, you're going to work out, like those people, first of all, that walk the trade show don't work out at all, right? They're fat penny loafers and they're big guts, right?
Yeah.
But
in high school, they were awesome.
They weren't.
Yeah.
So I would have known if they were. So they don't work out, right? But so they're buying for their clubs for people to work out, right? And these people are going into workout for 2 to 3 hours a week.
Right.
They're giving their health 2 or 3 hours a week, which is more than I currently do. But I mean, good for them. But still, it's nothing.
Hold on, wait.
It's nothing.
Wait, I got to tell you, I want to do a video at some point. It's going to be like a commercial, and it's going to start with a guy walking through an office saying, "Do you like overhead fluorescent lighting, Excel spreadsheets, and sitting on your butt all day? If so, you're a perfect candidate for a job in the outdoor industry."
Right, exactly, right. And then once a year you can walk a trade show, right?
Yeah, I get my 12 miles
in your heel,
a day.
in your shoes, right? Get your 1,000 steps in.
Well,
so anyway, it's fascinating to me that the people that are working out and the people that are leading the industry don't want people to make the best, most effective use of their 3 hours of time. And I had this discussion with a professional rugby team coach the other day, and he said, "Well, we don't like treadmills." And I'm standing there in his gym. I'm like, "That's cool."
Me either.
I said, "So, but I see that you have a bunch of watt bikes and you've got some rowers. Like, what do you do with those?" "Oh, well, we do cardio." I said, "Well, like as soon as your guys are playing rugby, sitting down or sitting on their ass, then this will be a great use of their time. But if they're only going to run for 30 minutes a week, if they're only going to give you 30 minutes a week for cardio or maybe 30 minutes a day, like you're going to have them do it sitting down and they're healthy? Like this does not make any sense. Why wouldn't you want them to do it in an environment where they're challenged to be balanced, they're challenged to be in a healthy position,
and do what they're doing for the sport,
and do what they're doing for their sport, or walking, or like so you're sitting down in your cubicle with your fluorescent lights.
We're replacing these. We're going to replace these with LCDs, by the way.
All right, excellent. So you're sitting in your cubicle. And then you're going to go exercise, and you're going to get on a machine that puts you in. Yeah, here I'm still in there. So that puts you into this position.
Yeah.
And you're going to do that for a period of time. Wouldn't you want to be, wouldn't you want to be offsetting all of that for your 2 to 3 hours a week? And that is the thing to me that is just. And I am so surprised by that.
I'll explain it to you. It's really simple. So, back in the 70s, market and before. Marketing and advertising was much simpler. We were much more willing to accept what we saw on television and what we heard from experts. And there were companies that were developing these products, including footwear, where they were just making it up. I mean, they were just making it up. And they came up with very clever stories where we would go, well, yeah, that clearly makes sense. It doesn't if you think about it. I mean, I'll use as an example from something recent because I can't think of a 40-year-old one or a 50-year-old one, but recently. So there's a company whose name I won't mention, but it rhymes with Adidas. And they when they came out with their, I won't mention the product, but let's say that it's Boost Foam. And when they came out with, so it's Adidas Boost Foam, if you didn't get that one.
Wait, what?
Was that too fast for you? So the example they give for how great the Boost Foam is they bounce a steel ball off the Boost Foam and they show how bouncy it is compared to, quote, the other guy's foam. Well, no other guy ever uses that foam, and who cares what a steel ball does because you're not a steel ball. But it looks good, and it's a very simple story.
Well, the other thing you see is the steel ball. I remember the ad. The steel ball because it goes high each time, and I'm like, okay, so you were losing, right? You were losing force. Like, how is this an advertisement, right? How stupid is this? Bouncing on a piece of concrete. Let me see how high the steel ball goes.
I know. In fact, I did something when I was in Germany because there were some guys from Adidas up there, and I said, "Want to see something cool? I don't have any Boost Foam," and I started jumping up and down. I said, "I can do this for like an hour, same height every time." But the point is that these companies that we know now as these multi-billion-dollar companies, they really got their stride. They really started building. I mean, Adidas and Puma, they've been around for a long time. Nike came onto the scene. Under Armour's come onto the scene more recently. Suffice it to say, they built these very big things, and they can't lose what they built. And we've had the CEOs of some major footwear brands say directly to people that we know, that natural movement thing is real, but we can't do it because it would be admitting that what we're doing over here is completely bullshit. So I was an individual sport athlete. You were a team athlete mostly.
Mostly, yeah.
So I don't know where
competitively.
I don't have a theory about this, but for me, I don't know which came first, but my individual athlete mentality is best thing wins. Best man wins, best woman wins, best whatever it is, best thing wins. When it comes to business, that is far from the case. And so when someone has built a big monolithic structure doing a thing, and they find out, or some upstart comes up and shows that what they're doing isn't right, amazingly, they don't go, oh my God, thank you for telling me that. We're going to spin on a dime, or whatever that metaphor or beer analogy is, turn everything around and do the right thing. What they do instead is try to protect what they have. They try to do everything they can to keep the status quo that they created, because that's how they're making all their money and paying all their people and doing all they do. And to a certain extent, I understand that. It makes sense. It's just completely absurd because it's not doing what's best for their customers, for the planet, for everybody. And that's the part that it amazes me and infuriates me, and I totally understand it. And my goal is to try to pull the rug out from underneath the whole thing. If my goal is not to make Zero Shoes the next $2 billion company, that would be a blast. I'm not saying I don't want to do that, but if what happens is everyone started copying what we're doing and just started making natural movement footwear so that people would have the benefits and fun of doing that, then I've won. I mean, I'm okay either way. I'm trying to make natural movement a thing, and if we're the company that's associated with that and benefits from that and spearheads that, that's awesome.
How do you feel about when you've done that work, as we have, in terms of creating an environment that people can naturally run in and actually improve how they would run naturally?
Yeah.
Having imitators come in and say, we're the same as that.
And they're not.
And except we're cheaper, or we're this, or we're that. And they're not. Yeah. And they don't get it. And their curve, for instance, and it's all about the curve, is 3 times steeper than ours.
Right.
You get on, you're running like a lunatic, and you're on another stupid exercise machine.
Right.
And they're saying, hey, check out, and because they put runner in their name, or they put form in their name, or they put skill in their name, that somehow,
for example,
just
hypothetically,
something that rhymes with, so that they put this stuff in their name, and then they say that they're same as Trueform, or they get somebody that was once a spokesperson for you, and they pay them, or they whatever, and it just pisses me off. I don't feel like I won. I feel like I want to go over and.
You want me to answer, or do you want me to let you keep venting?
No, winning for me would be going squeezing their little heads and having their brains pop out of their ears. That's winning.
So, I kind of go both ways on this. I like to say I'm not competitive. I just want to beat everyone who's my competition.
Yeah.
And I'm only half glib when I say that, because to a certain extent I don't want to be paying unnecessary attention to them. I want to do the thing that's right for us. We've had that situation where people have. I mean, my gosh, there was a company. Their origin story was that they were trying to find a minimalist sandal, but they couldn't find anything that worked for them, so they invented this, and it was my design. and I have. It's funny. I watched a thing on YouTube. The Hollywood Reporter's doing these roundtable sessions with a bunch of actors. I don't know if they've done it with writers. I've only seen different kinds of actors. And Jim Carrey was on one with Sacha Baron Cohen, a.k.a. Ali G, a.k.a. Borat. And Jim said something that was really interesting. He said, when I saw what you were doing, I was so amazed and so jealous because it was so incredible what you were doing. I realized I had 2 choices. I could just be furious, or I could become a giant fan, and I decided to do that one. Yeah. And so with what's happening with us, when I was just in Germany, I saw some Korean company and a Chinese company trying to do a version of what we're doing. More, they were really trying to do their version of what Merrill was doing, but it was a little, frankly, I think better than what Merrill was doing and a little closer to what we were doing. And at this point, it made me really happy, because we're trying to get more attention and awareness for what we're doing. And if someone else comes on board and starts to do something similar, it gives some validation to what we're doing. So I'm all for that. Now, a couple of these companies, they're selling a product that doesn't last very long, that's not very well made, that doesn't have the same benefits that we do. They are claiming the same thing, and they sell them for much less money. It's undeniably cost me money this year. We've lost sales on certain places, but what are you going to do is the simple thing. So I had actually a major company take a bunch of my trademarks. I walked into a trade show, and all over their booth was things that I invented that I had trademarked. trademarks for. That one, I actually was the most expensive lesson I learned about business is I basically got them to stop using the trademark before they had brought product into America and started selling it. And so they sent me a kind of whiny letter saying, we spent $7 million to try and redo everything. And I said, well, I don't really care. You could have owned the trademark in my whole company for $5 million. So stop your whining. But the biggest mistake was had I waited until all the product was here and they were selling it, the value of that case would have been about $350 million. So it's, I guess this is just my venting. The simple answer is sometimes it's really annoying not because they're copying what we're doing and making claims that aren't valid. That part, I understand why they're doing it. Again, I get it. Yep. What's upsetting to me is that it's confusing people, and it's making it so that someone is going to get that product because it's from a bigger, more famous company with more distribution, and they're going to think that they're having the same experience they would have. Right. Well, the same experience they'd have in our shoes or even just barefoot. The number of people that I've met who say that they're barefoot runners who've never had their bare skin touch the ground is very high. And the difference between that and wearing zero shoes it's a difference. The difference between wearing zero shoes and wearing a Merrell Trail Glove or a New Balance Minimalist, it's a significant difference. And I don't like it when people make money by lying to other people. So that's the part that upsets me. It's my kind of quixotic tilting at windmills because there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to ever stop people from doing that.
When the people want to follow, I mean, more the issue on our standpoint, they need to make very little claims with respect to what they accomplish, whereas I feel like we have to validate everything, and I'm sure it's an exercise in futility, but they say very little. Like I said, they just put something in their name that infers that you're getting better. Oh, look. But then the people follow. I mean, they're like they're just sheeps, and they just go, look at me, I'm True Form running, right? And they're on True Form running. They're on something that could not be farther from a True Form, other than that it's curved and non-motorized.
Right.
And they've got some dumb shoe, and they're running they're running in a horrible form, and they're hashtag True Form running.
So speaking of which, what shoes are you wearing?
I have on the Prius. Prio.
Yeah. Okay.
Prius is the car.
Yeah. You're big enough to wear a Prius, but that would be tricky. But I think the answer to your question is for me, I go through. Let me describe it this way. Someone asked me how you become successful in business. I go, well, I went to film school. I got a master's in film, and one of my teachers is the director, Milos Forman. And someone asked Milos once, how do you make a good movie? And he said, well, 90% of making a movie is casting, and the other 10% is casting. And so I say for business, it's 90% luck, and the other 10% is luck. But then there's a whole other 100% where 90% of that is working your butt off, and the other 10% is hopefully being smart enough that you know how to fix the things that are broken today that were working perfectly yesterday. So when something is in that 10%, where something is just breaks out of nowhere, some crazy thing happens, my MO is that I rant and run around and get all upset, and then some number of minutes or hours, depending on what it is later, I get into solution mode. For what we're talking about, I get into the ranty thing for a little while, and the solution is frankly things like this. It's how do we have this conversation so that we can educate people about what reality looks like, so that they can find out what the distinction really is, so they can have the experience of knowing what the difference is. Because again, it's my individual sport mentality, but I really do believe that the truth should and often does win overall. And if not, if some marketing whatever budget from some other company is the thing that's going to dominate it, I'm just not going to beat myself up.
When you can't control that. I mean, I think that's when I get angry about it.
Yeah.
I think, what can I do about it, right? Because you can't, go squash their heads like grapes, right? So shouldn't
very Lord of the Flies.
So I think okay, what can I control today, right? And for us, typically it's just been staying on message, right? So and hopefully, that the masses will follow the tip of the spear, because like I said, like you said, when we started, like my Rolodex, for a guy who has been a contractor most of his life, or a grape farmer, my Rolodex in the fitness industry right now is insane.
Crazy.
And it's just because we've been on message and people like it, right?
Well, and I think the only other thing the only thing you can do is educate. And unfortunately, education is expensive. And in fact, when you are successful at educating, then it's inevitable that someone is going to come along and literally do exactly what you do and do it correctly and do it well and maybe even better, because by that time, you've gotten, and I'm not speaking about you, I'm thinking about our business, previous business I've been in, where someone can you're busy doing the things that you need to do to run your business. Maybe there's something on your to-do list that you're not going to be able to get to for a year, and they can do it now. So it's inevitable that the number two guy is coming in with some advantage. And I'm not even saying that the guys that you're competing with now are number two. I'm saying that as you get better, there's going to be other opportunities.
There are billion-dollar companies, $100 billion companies that just spinning out a product, right?
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. If I'm thinking about the computer world, so Lotus came out with their spreadsheet 1, 2, 3, then Borland copied it, and Borland did better than Lotus because they were able to do things like that. Windows was not the first operating system. I mean, the number. This is just an interesting thing to ponder, and I don't know what that means in terms of running a business and trying to circumvent that process. I think there's a way of doing it. I think velocity is an important thing. I think whatever you can do to capitalize or accelerate the way you are telling that message is one of the solutions. I don't know how one would do that. Again, this is a small thing of talking to the people who are able to participate with this podcast. There are some ways of doing it that require spending a lot of money, some that are more guerrilla. But I think that's the only way, is staying on message, having a real message, being able to let people experience the difference, and finding the way to just accelerate the dissemination of that message. Man, that was like an SAT phrase. that was really, I feel really smart when I said that. So, but suffice it to say, that's what you and I are both trying to do, and it's one of the reasons that I adore you guys and what you're doing and want to help, because I do believe that what you're doing is the real deal, and people need to hear about it and need to have that experience, and get the benefits thereof, because that's what this is really all about. The whole natural movement thing, from my perspective, is getting people to re-experience that thing that we all had, that we all knew at some point, that we lost for various reasons, and it's never too late to get it back. And what we're doing is providing the tools for people to do that.
Yeah, no, I obviously agree. So.
Well, I mean, I can't think of anything to say to follow that, and I can usually think of anything to say. So why don't we call it a day on that one,
Sounds
shall
great.
we?
Yeah.
Obviously, if you want to find out more about a True Form Treadmill, go to
Trueformrunner.com.
Trueform runner.com. We'll post links for that in various places. And again, I want to thank you for being part of the Movement and the Movement podcast. If you don't remember, you can go to www, as many W's as you want, I don't really care, .join the movement. Or none. You don't even actually need any. But that way people know it's a website. I don't know. And, I like when people say, go to this website. It's all one word. Of course it's all one word. Anyway, so join the movement.com, where you can find us on iTunes and well, pretty much everywhere. Find our Facebook page and our YouTube channel and our Instagram and our wherever else podcasts are sold. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share and review and all those things you know how to do. As I love to say, if you want to be part of the tribe, please subscribe. It's been a pleasure having you here. And as always, live life feet first.